Violence against children takes many forms, and there have been global movements to end corporal punishment for children as well. But I think it's interesting to see the way that adults, where it is still a widely accepted practice, respond. To be honest, I think it takes a shift in mindset. So, 100 years ago in the UK, in the US, it's still legal. So corporal punishment is still legal in the US, within school spaces as well. But in the UK, it was acceptable, and it took a concerted effort, as you say, and it took a generation. It started with legislation, and then it took a mindset shift in order for people to start saying, okay, this isn't acceptable. It's not acceptable for children to be treated this way. And that covers the spectrum of violence from, a light beating to things that are more serious and can actually physically harm kids. A reason why it doesn't receive the same kind of response is really because there was a news piece that actually was shared in our work WhatsApp group today, which was a response to which recorded teachers in Islamabad, their response to the ban on corporal punishment in teaching spaces. And apparently teachers are really unhappy with the slogan, "Maar nahi pyar." And, they're saying it's interfering with the way that they teach kids, and it's interfering with learning. And I think that is something that will take years to change. In terms of the impact on children,
it's imperative that the government does have an oversight system. This is what I tell the Human Rights Ministry and other ministries as well. We can't say that, this case is from Karachi, this case is from Lahore, this case is from Balochistan, and Islamabad cannot interfere. Islamabad may be a little bit more sensitive about these things. So I think that in general, there has to be an oversight. So Sindh passed the bill in 2016, and the rules of business were made last year. So this corporal punishment law does not interfere with what's going on in homes. And similar is the case with the bill that I passed last year after 3 years of struggle. In KP, there is a Child Protection Act from 2010. And Balochistan, there is a Child Protection and Welfare Act. And in GB, there is a Corporal Act 2015. In AJK, there is a Child Rights 2016. So if we want to work with it, we have a little bit of whatever it takes. But the political will and treating children as very important and essential part of our population is extremely essential.
Violence and the threat of violence, they can settle in the brain. And one of the big things really is that for the child also, it is then seen as an acceptable way of resolving conflict. So children who have experienced violence in childhood often go on to be the ones to perpetuate it later on as well, whether it's in intimate partner relationships or whether it's with their own children. Violence begets violence, essentially. And so that's one big piece of it. Adverse childhood experiences can have various kinds of impacts, and they can range from kids becoming really shy and withdrawn to becoming aggressive and expressing violence. One thing is for sure, it affects health, it affects mental health, and that does have a broader effect on society and the kind of world that we go on to create. Because we don't want individuals out there who think it's okay, who deal with ups and downs in their life by expressing themselves through violence.
Right now, the Prohibition of Corporal Punishment Act is present in Islamabad and in Sindh only. So in the other provinces, it's not in letter and spirit. It's under the Welfare Act or it's in the Protection Act, and they don't have rules of business. So we have to start with is a full campaign in Pakistan, not just a campaign, but to enact the bill in all the provinces where it's not. And Punjab is a glaring example. We don't have a corporal prohibition of corporal punishment in Punjab. And Punjab being the large province, I think it has to be done. And I'm very happy to report, because I'm also the global co-chair of International Parliamentary Education Network, that Pakistan, because of the bill that was passed in Islamabad Capital Territory, is considered to be a case study, a success case study. And we are working with, there are many campaigns and global alliances to end corporal punishment, to end violence against children.
So there's a long road between passing a law and ensuring implementation. So I know that there's been progress in ICT. In Sindh, there was progress, but then things didn't go through. And as far as the home is concerned, the relationship between parents and their children is seen as a very private thing. And so having that legislation passed for schools has been hard enough. And there's been pushback around that as well. Teachers are protesting. But extending it to the private sphere of the home, we're a very long way from that. And we're a very long way from changing perceptions around how children should be treated or can be treated by adults. And how that lesson should be taught, whether it is a moral lesson or whether it is an academic lesson. First, there has to be a clear understanding of the law and a widespread understanding of it. People need to know that it exists and, this is no longer acceptable. And then there needs to be mechanisms for complaint as well as redress. So what happens if there is a violation? Who can we go to? And will there be actual repercussions?
Once the bill is passed, it is a big deterrent in itself, and especially in Islamabad Capital Territory, where the police is very good. The government itself, the federal government, is very dedicated to it. So you see that, the deterrence. And once the rules of business will be there, and all the we will approach all of the institutions that I have mentioned to you, there would be strict adherence. I mean, I see an adherence right now also. Just the fact that I saw a videotape of a child being beaten in a workshop and saying to the Capitol Police that, we have a corporal punishment bill act which covers workplace for children. In itself, the man can be, I think he should have been right now, he should be taken to task by now.
Cities for Children was set up to protect what we call the right to a childhood for kids in urban poverty, the right to read, to play, and to feel safe. And some of the things that we started out doing at the very beginning was to do workshops with teachers. This was before the legislation around corporal punishment was passed, around what kinds of challenges they faced, what kinds of mental health challenges they faced. And in our pilot workshops, one of the big things that came up that they wanted to learn how to deal with was how to deal with learning difficulties and also how to deal with behavioral issues without using corporal punishment. And these were teachers from schools in Kachi Abadi, open air schools, this amazing system of schools called Pehli Kiran schools. In Islamabad, they had recently passed this internal policy that nobody's allowed to hit children. And the big question that teachers asked was, then what else do we do? Because I think one thing that we do want to work on at Cities for Children is to equip teachers with those alternative strategies and teaching pedagogies. So that's something in the pipeline that I hope to work on. One of the things that we did during COVID, when there was a lot of risk of children facing more domestic abuse because they were cooped up and parents were under stress, and it was a difficult time for the world. We launched this little animation and simple resource pack called Maar Nahi Pyar, but it was well received by our partner schools, by networks of teachers, and also by global organizations working to end violence. And I think we realized that what was most important was not just understanding what the impact of violence on children can be, but also what the alternatives are. So just like the teachers said in the beginning, what else do we do? It's very important to give caregivers, teachers, all those who are in contact with children a little kind of code of conduct, and also just the ways that they can deal with children or deal with difficult situations with children without resorting to violence. So simple little things that can help them in their everyday practice. One of the biggest things that needs to be done is that the messaging needs to go public. It needs to go big so that slowly public perceptions can start to change. And those alternatives can enter the mind and enter the consciousness. And this idea that violence is not okay, hitting children is not okay, degrading punishment is not okay, and children have rights, and they also have responsibilities. And there are ways that there can be a respectful relationship and everybody can move forward. Just having that enter the public consciousness would be a very big deal. Along with legislation, those practical ideas around what else can be done are also shared. Both those things need to go hand in hand. It's not enough to just have legislation, but there's a big need to work on creating that mindset shift, because a lot of the time the adults feel that they are entitled to wield power over children and to teach for violence to be a method of teaching children. And when we say corporal punishment, or it could include, again, the spectrum of violence, but also I think it's important to think about what we call humiliating or degrading punishment. So, mulgha banana, or verbal abuse, or the range of things that can have a detrimental effect on children while they're growing up.
We are not. And these are also the power dynamics of who controls and who's in charge. The child being subservient to all, the parents, the teacher, anyone in a powerful position. That's the dynamic of our society. And hence, since we can't change our social and traditional way of doing things, and things are getting worse for children, actually, with the frustration, with the inflation and all of that. So taking it out on kids, whether it's home, whether it's public places, and especially schools.